You've reached a turning point, not a random crossroad, but a living doorway where reality quietly rearranges itself around you. Pause for a moment. The reason these words have found you now isn't chance. Life arranges mirrors only when you're prepared to look into them, to glimpse the version of yourself that's been waiting behind the glass, half hidden until today. One morning you wake and everything appears unchanged. The same faces, the same streets, the same morning rituals. Yet under the surface, something feels unfamiliar, like a melody you can't quite place. The patterns that used to hold you no longer feel like home. Nobody around you can sense it, but you can't unfeel it. That isn't chaos. It's transition. That quiet pressure in your chest, that haze behind your thoughts, that urge to step outside the rules you once wrote for yourself. This isn't a breakdown, it's an invitation. Change rarely knocks with clarity. It arrives as a whisper in the back of your mind, a feeling without a name, a subtle restlessness that only makes sense in hindsight. You've felt it, haven't you? As if some future version of you has already begun moving while you're still catching up. You distract yourself with logic, with schedules, with noise. Yet in the silence, its pull grows stronger, not as sound, but as gravity, as weight, as magnetism. Deep down, you know something has already started. This is not mere emotional turbulence. This is a quantum shift, a recalibration of timelines. The energy field around you, the lattice of possibility itself, is reorganizing. Your frequency no longer matches what you once called normal. Because of that, your present reality begins to soften, not explode. It isn't falling apart, it's releasing. What you're feeling is the space between worlds. This in-between is sacred, the fertile void where new realities germinate. Most people flee from it. They label it stuckness, try to fix what isn't broken, panic at the silence. But you're different. You're here. You're listening. Some part of you already knows this is not an ending, but an initiation. The routines that feel foreign now were built for a self that no longer exists. Habits, relationships, obligations, they matched who you were, not who you're becoming. The echo you sense isn't a demand, it's a resonance, a frequency reminding you that collapse isn't required for transformation. Disaster isn't necessary, only stillness, enough to feel what's already moving. And that's why this moment is powerful. Not because something is about to happen, but because something already has. You're not waiting for your life to begin. You're standing in the exact breath where it already did. Yet the old world won't leave quietly. It will lure you with comfort, seduce you with familiarity, remind you of what once felt safe, but now feels confining. That isn't weakness. It's your nervous system detoxing from a lifetime of survival patterns. Breathe through it. Witness it. Don't mistake it for truth. Here's what the thinking mind won't reveal. Discomfort is information. It signals that your energy is moving faster than your surroundings. It means the field is stretching. Your higher self has already said yes, and your body is learning to catch up. The outer world may not change overnight, but you will. And that's where everything begins. We've been taught that change must arrive with fireworks, signs, and perfect timing. In quantum reality, the deepest shifts arrive softly. While you're washing dishes, driving to work, sitting in stillness, wondering why your chest feels tight, and your dreams both near and far. That's not random. That's alignment forming in the unseen. And if you've been asking for confirmation, this is it. Not because these words are special, but because your readiness is. You wouldn't even be hearing them, unless you were already inside the transformation. This isn't the start of your shift, it's the recognition of it. And recognition collapses potential into form. Quantum physics calls this the observer effect. Reality responds to awareness. When you realize you're in transition, the transition accelerates. So remember this: you're not lost, not behind, not broken. You're expanding, stepping out of a timeline you've outgrown into one that's been waiting for you to notice it. That future self is already alive in the field. It's been speaking through your discomfort, nudging through your boredom, beckoning through your fatigue, and now you're listening. Now you're seeing. Now you're remembering. In the next moments, we'll open a doorway into why the people closest to you may not understand what you're feeling, and why that isn't a mistake, but a signpost. When your inner frequency stops matching your old world, it's not proof you're lost. It's confirmation you're being repositioned. One of the most tender and challenging phases of awakening is realizing some companions will not walk the next stretch of road with you. Not because they're bad, not because they're wrong, but because your resonance is shifting to a wavelength they haven't yet remembered. This recognition carries a strange mixture of freedom and grief, a quiet mourning for the version of you who blended easily, who could be explained, who fit without effort. Yet that earlier self was never the full story. You weren't born to be easily decoded. You were born to evolve. And evolution requires friction. It calls for the discomfort of outgrowing what once felt like destiny. That friend who now seems far away. That job that once lit you up. That path that used to feel solid but now feels hollow. These are not simply losses. They are mirrors, energetic evidence that your internal signal has changed. As your vibration recalibrates, so does what you attract, what you tolerate, what you magnetize. In the language of physics, this is coherence and decoherence. When your inner signal drifts too far from your environment, the field begins to reorganize. You experience it as boredom, fatigue, frustration, or loneliness. But this is not punishment. It is resonance creating space for what truly fits you now. And it's precisely in this threshold, between who you were and who you're becoming, that life often tests your courage. Not through storms, but through silence. People may murmur, "You've changed." They may ask, "What's wrong?" They may worry about you. Not because you're broken, but because your transformation unsettles their sense of stability. Here's the hidden piece. Your shift can awaken their fear, not through any intent of yours, but because when one person in a system grows, the whole system trembles. Your evolution becomes a mirror, and not everyone is ready to face what it reflects back at them. So what do? You breathe, you ground, you listen, you stop shrinking, you stop apologizing for your expansion, you stop explaining away your becoming. You learn to walk through the valley of invisibility with grace, knowing your alignment is not up for debate. You're not here to be a neat category. You're here to be a frequency, a living vibration, a moving demonstration of what happens when someone chooses authenticity over approval, resonance over routine, truth over comfort. This path is quieter and sometimes lonelier, but it's far more magnetic. Because once you match the vibration of your higher timeline, coincidences collapse into synchronicities. The right people, the right conversations, the unexpected doors. They don't precede your shift. They arise because of it. The paradox is this: as you grow, you may become less visible to your old world and more visible to your true one. The reality that's been waiting for you to show up as your unmasked self. Not the curated version, but the self that no longer needs to justify its pull toward depth, silence, or expansion. That self is already forming and drawing to itself a new ecosystem built on resonance, not reputation. This is the part of quantum change most people miss. It doesn't begin with an external makeover. It starts with a frequency split. Your consciousness vibrates at a new rate, and your old structures can no longer hold. That's why relationships fade, passions shift, and pretending feels unbearable. Because your deeper self knows what it once tolerated was survival, not alignment. You're not crazy. You're not dramatic. You're awakening to what your system always knew, but your mind had to forget to fit in. Now it's time to remember. You don't need universal approval. You need your own understanding. You need to honor the quiet truth rising from your discomfort, the voice that whispers, "I'm not lost. I'm shedding." Take this as permission, not from me, but from the field itself, to release the need to be understood. Walk your path with reverence even if no one applauds. Trust that your alignment is sending ripples others can't yet see, but will feel when they're ready. You're not here to make sense. You're here to make resonance. And as we move forward, we'll revisit the story of your past, not as weight to carry, but as a map of every frequency that brought you here. Seen through quantum eyes, nothing was wasted. Everything prepared you for this exact, sacred moment. There comes a moment on the spiritual path when you stop staring at your past with anger and begin to see it as raw material. That single shift redefines everything. Because once you realize nothing you lived through was wasted, you stop trying to outrun your story and begin weaving it into your becoming. The scars you carry, the confusion you once cursed, the mistakes you thought shattered everything, none of them were random. They were initiations. They weren't placed to break you, but to refine you. The quantum field doesn't judge with right or wrong, reward or punishment. It mirrors vibration. What you labeled as failure, the field translated as contrast, calibration, momentum in disguise. When you revisit your past with awakened perception, the detours stop looking like dead ends and start appearing as treasure maps, sacred blueprints of the energetic threads that guided you to this very point. And yes, many of those threads were painful. The heartbreak that left you gasping, the betrayals that fractured your trust, the years of effort that seemed fruitless, the jobs that drained you, the friendships that shrank you, the silence of being unseen. All of it was tuning your frequency. Because operating on a quantum level reveals something vital. Alignment is not about circumstances, it's about vibration. And sometimes the quickest path to stabilizing a higher frequency is to walk through every lower one. Not as punishment, but as completion. The old self must be witnessed fully before it can dissolve. Your past was not a pile of broken pieces. It was training. Every version of you that hesitated, that settled, that numbed, that ran. Each was practicing contrast so that when alignment finally landed, you would recognize it instantly, without doubt, without sabotage, with the wisdom of someone who earned their clarity through fire. This is why the universe never hurries. Its aim isn't to hand you outcomes on demand, but to sculpt you into the person who can sustain them. That becoming demanded everything. Every delay, every detour, every moment of why me was actually a doorway to now I understand. And even if you haven't reached that clarity yet, even if shame still lingers over choices made or years you think you've lost, hear this. Nothing was wasted. Not a season, not a setback, not a breakdown. Especially not the breakdown. Because in quantum reality, breakdown is simply the unraveling of incoherence. the dismantling of patterns that no longer match your true vibration. And when that dismantling begins, it may look like your life is collapsing. But in truth, your old scaffolding is dissolving to make space for a reality built not on survival, but on sovereignty. You're not shattered, you're remembering. You're not behind, you're being synchronized. Viewed through this lens, you see that the timeline you once believed was broken was never off course. It was spiraling, expanding, preparing you for a quantum leap, one that could only occur once your energy matured enough to hold it. So instead of resenting your past, bow to it. Treat it as a rite of passage, an invisible curriculum training you in the language of vibration. Every rejection taught you discernment. Every closed door pointed you toward direction. Every loss cleared the channel for alignment. Even procrastination was a signal, showing you where fear lived. Even sabotage was sacred, revealing what you doubted you deserved. Even numbness had its place, giving your nervous system time to catch up. You were never wandering off path. You've always been rehearsing for the life that now resonates with your truth. And if there's still a whisper inside saying, "But I wasted too much time," listen deeper. What you call wasted years, the universe calls quantum gestation. There is already a version of you encoded within the quantum field, waiting to unfold after enough contrast, enough preparation, enough inner pressure to birth the next octave of your being. That moment isn't somewhere in the future. It's here. You're sensing it because the threshold has already been crossed. You're not anticipating arrival. You're realizing you're inside it now. This shift, this remembering, is living proof that everything before this wasn't punishment, but programming. Vibrational coding, the deeper software of your becoming. In the next moments, you'll start to feel that truth land in your body as we explore how the universe whispers through discomfort, not to warn you, but to beckon you. You'll see your restlessness for what it truly is. Not a red flag, but a recalibration. The signs have been woven around you all along. You're just now ready to read them. Every transformation has a stage that doesn't feel like a breakthrough at all. It feels like confusion, like walking through a room where everything looks familiar, yet nothing fits. It isn't chaos or catastrophe. It's just off, gently, persistently. You can't explain it to anyone because on the surface, nothing is wrong. But beneath, something is rearranging. That quiet rearrangement is the whisper, the subtle call of your future timeline reaching for you, not with orders, but with curiosity. The whisper doesn't shout, doesn't beg, doesn't justify. It simply echoes through a stranger's remark, a sudden urge to clear your space, a flicker of a memory you'd forgotten. It moves through dreams, through repeated numbers, through the ache in your chest that appears when you pretend everything's fine. Most ignore it, not because they can't hear, but because they fear it's real. Fear that following it would mean loosening their grip on everything built for safety. But you're not here for safety. You're here for truth. And truth never barges in. It waits to be invited. That subtle discontent, that quiet hunger you've been feeling, it's not random. It's not a mood. It's your timeline speaking, the one already alive in the quantum field, where you're fully expressed, free, awake. That timeline is already vibrating, and what you're sensing now is resonance. In physics, when two frequencies sync, they amplify. That's what's happening within you. The longer you sit with the whisper, the stronger it becomes. Not in volume, but in presence, in weight. It starts coloring your days, slipping between your thoughts, pausing your hand before the same old choice. Questions rise you never thought to ask, and that's when the invitation becomes undeniable. The field is not punishing you with discomfort. It's aligning you through it. Until the old timeline becomes uncomfortable, you won't release it. You'll stay loyal out of habit rather than harmony. That's why the whisper grows louder in stillness. Not to frighten you, but to remind you that change doesn't begin with action. It begins with permission. And this is that moment. If you've been looking for a sign, a confirmation, a quiet yes that it's okay to want more, this is it. The whisper is not an idea. It's an invitation. Not to repair yourself, but to return to yourself. Not to begin again, but to begin aligned. The next version of you won't be built under a spotlight. It's being sculpted in silence, in micro-decisions, in those small, sacred spaces where you choose resonance over routine. Each time you honor the whisper instead of the noise, you collapse a new possibility into form. That's not just poetic, that's quantum. Reality responds not to what you say, but to what you resonate. And when you start honoring the whisper, you broadcast a new signal into the field. A signal that says, I am no longer available for what doesn't align. That frequency draws in different people, different outcomes, different timelines. Not through force, but because you finally match them. Right now, you have a choice. Not some dramatic, life-altering decision, but one subtle shift to honor what you've been hearing in the quiet. Whisper back. Affirm, I hear the invitation. I'm ready for the shift. Say it not for me, but for you, for your field, for the part of you that's been whispering all along, waiting for your reply. This very moment is more than just you watching or listening. It's a vibrational agreement, a sacred yes to what has always been waiting once you stopped demanding it make logical sense. Because the whisper never argues. It speaks in the language of soul, of vibration, of knowing without evidence. And if you follow it, you won't just change your life, you'll change your timeline. In the next moments, we'll explore why that quiet inner whisper often travels hand in hand with fear, and how that fear isn't a warning, but a signal you're close. So close, in fact, that your old identity is beginning to soften and dissolve. The next self isn't waiting somewhere out in the future. It's here, now. All that's required is stillness long enough to let it in. There's a strange paradox in awakening. The nearer you come to the version of yourself you've always longed to embody, the more the tremble rises in your chest. On paper, it doesn't add up. Isn't this what you prayed for, journaled about at midnight, whispered to the sky? I'm ready? And yet, now that it's here, now that you're at the edge of a life-altering horizon, your breath shortens, your heart races, and a part of you longs to retreat to what's familiar. The secret is this, that fear isn't a red flag, it's a marker. Not that you're in danger, but that you're in transit. Not that you should stop, but that an entire version of reality is about to collapse into form. In quantum physics, there's a phenomenon called tunneling. A particle somehow slips through a barrier it's not supposed to pass. Even scientists marvel at it. Spiritually, we've known the principle forever. When the soul is ready, rules bend, matter reshuffles, timelines reconfigure to match the energy of a fully decided heart. The fear you feel is friction, the echo of the timeline you're leaving, tugging at your nervous system one last time. It whispers, stay small, don't leap, be safe. But safety isn't the goal now. Expansion is. Your current identity, the one built from years of beliefs, habits, and survival strategies, can't see what's beyond the threshold, so it panics. Not because danger awaits, but because mystery does. The ego would rather remain in a predictable cage than walk blindfolded into paradise. But your soul already knows the view. It already lives on the other side. That tension, the anxiety, the doubt, the sudden urge to self-sabotage, is simply your ego trying to protect an old algorithm. This is who you are. This is how it's always been, but that story isn't true anymore. And the very intensity of it is proof of how close you are to rewriting it. Here's how you know you're brushing against a quantum leap. Fear stops being loud and becomes deep. It disguises itself as logic, as reasons to delay, as whispers of, maybe I'm not ready. That's not wisdom. That's inertia. And inertia is strongest right before the shift. Your new timeline isn't something you invent from scratch. It's something you attune to. Tuning means releasing static, the noise of the past, the doubt of the present, the illusion of control. Each time fear rises, take a breath, not to escape it, but to recognize it as the thin membrane between dimensions. The closer you are to passing through, the thicker it feels. But you weren't built to shatter at the threshold. You were built to cross it. And the beauty of quantum transitions is they don't require certainty, only coherence. You don't have to know how it works. You simply vibrate as though it already has, because in the field, it already has. The version of you who lives that new reality is already real, sending signals backward through intuition, dreams, and sudden flashes of knowing, urging the present you. Don't stop now. We're so close. As you approach, strange things may unfold. Old friends drift away. Opportunities appear, then vanish. Your sleep changes. Your emotions swing wide. That isn't instability. It's calibration. Your entire system, physical, emotional, energetic, is synchronizing to a new frequency. Everything misaligned begins to fall off. Let it. Let the habits fade, the distractions crumble, the roles you've outgrown dissolve. Because what's rising through the fear is your actual life. Not the one you were taught to settle for, but the one you were encoded to live. And this trembling, electric, breathtaking moment, this is what choosing it feels like. Not with words, but with your whole field. If you're scared right now, good. It means you're not circling anymore. You're pressing against the wall between timelines, and that wall is thinner than it seems. All that's left is to feel the fear and move anyway, not with force, but with trust, presence, and the quiet conviction that this isn't just a phase, it's a portal, and the real version of you is waiting just beyond, not with explanations, but with alignment. As we close this journey, let's anchor a truth most people miss. The shift you've been waiting for isn't on its way. It's already here. What happens next isn't about chasing it. It's about remembering it, stabilizing it, embodying it. And if you're ready to ground this awareness into real life with clarity and precision, there's a way to hold this vibration longer and more powerfully than before. We've been taught a subtle myth that transformation always lives in the distance. One more book, one more course, one more sign from the sky. But what if the unease you've been feeling isn't a prelude to the shift, but proof you're already standing inside it? Because the real shift rarely arrives with trumpets. It slips in quietly, on the breath between questions. It begins when you stop asking, when will it happen? And start realizing it already has. Right now, your outer world may look unchanged. Same walls, same job, same relationships. But internally, a new frequency is taking root. You said yes to something deeper, And even if you don't yet know its shape, the field has already rearranged itself to meet you. Reality doesn't wait for your readiness. It answers who you are now. The fact that you're still here, listening, breathing, following this thread, that's not mere curiosity. That's coherence. That's your deeper self recognizing this moment as a hinge. The vibrational threshold has already been crossed. What's left now is to walk it out. Don't expect fireworks overnight. Expect alignment, subtle realignments in your thoughts, your choices, the way you speak to yourself. The shift isn't an event. It's a frequency. And the more you stabilize it, the more your external world bends to your internal truth. This is what spiritual maturity looks like. Holding the vibration before the results appear. Trusting the frequency before the manifestation is visible. Understanding that the field reshapes reality not through striving, but through embodiment. So ask yourself, if you knew beyond a doubt your new timeline was already active, how would you move today? Would you still doubt? Still wait for permission? Still feed the old stories? Or would you breathe deeper, speak more clearly, say no to what drains you even if it's comfortable, and start inhabiting your life like someone who knows they've already changed? That's the invitation the field is holding open right now. Not a promise for later, a portal for now. You don't need to be flawless to walk through it. Yes, your nervous system may tremble, but you're allowed to live in the becoming. You're allowed to show up raw, unsure, but present, because the shift isn't about perfection. It's about presence, about being more real than your fear, more coherent than your chaos, more trusting than your trauma. If you feel called to deepen this awareness, to anchor it beyond inspiration into lasting transformation, I've created a guide for moments like this. It isn't just theory, it's activation. It was made for those ready to stop waiting and start embodying. You'll find the link in the pinned comment below. Take your time, or step in now. Either way, know this. The field has already shifted, and so have you. You didn't just watch a video, you participated in a timeline. Whether you feel the full surge or only its edges, your future self is already celebrating. Because today you remembered. You remembered it was never about trying harder, but about tuning in, listening, saying yes to the version of you that's been waiting all along. Not somewhere far off, but right here, in the stillness. The shift isn't coming. The shift is here.